It was the summer of 1994 when I took a temporary job at a remote mountain lodge near the Grand Canyon. I had just finished my first year of college and wanted some peace away from the noise of the city. The place looked ancient but beautiful. Thick logs, wide porches, and a breathtaking view of the desert horizon. The owner, Mr. Hartley, told me most workers quit before the end of summer. He laughed nervously when I asked why, saying people can't handle the silence. My job was simple: help in the kitchen, clean up, and close at night. There were only a handful of staff members, 2 cooks, a janitor named Bill, and an older night manager, Evelyn, who rarely smiled. The lodge was far from any town, surrounded by endless pine forest and Red Canyon cliffs. It had no cell service, and the nearest police station was over an hour away. The isolation didn't bother me at first. In fact, I thought it was perfect. For the first week, everything felt peaceful. I'd finish my shift at 2 a.m. and walk the quiet halls toward my cabin. Sometimes, I'd stop by the back door to stare at the canyon under the moonlight. It was hauntingly beautiful, vast, endless, and so quiet it felt unreal. But after a few nights, I started hearing something strange. A low hum, like someone whispering my name from far below the canyon. I tried ignoring it, convincing myself it was just wind moving through the cliffs. But one night, when I stepped outside, the sound became clearer, like voices, dozens of them, echoing through the night air. I froze. There was no one out there, yet I could feel the vibration of the whispers beneath my feet, as if the earth itself was speaking. The next morning, I mentioned it to Bill, the janitor. He went pale and told me never to go near the canyon edge at night. "This land remembers," he muttered before walking off. Evelyn overheard and gave him a sharp look, then turned to me with a forced smile. "Bill likes his ghost stories," she said. But her tone sounded rehearsed, too calm. Later that night, the power flickered out during my shift. It was just me and the faint light from the emergency lamps. While checking the generator out back, I noticed footprints in the dirt. Bare feet, small ones, leading toward the canyon. I followed them for a few meters until they simply vanished, like whoever made them had stepped into thin air. That was when I began hearing the knocking. 3 slow knocks on the back door, always at exactly 3:07 a.m. The first time, I thought it was Bill playing a prank. The second night, I opened the door immediately, but there was no one there, only the wind and the smell of wet earth. I stopped checking after that. Evelyn told me the lodge was built in 1921, long before the park was officially open to the public. She said some of the workers back then disappeared during construction. The official story was a landslide, but locals whispered that the canyon took them. I didn't know what that meant, but I started locking my cabin door every night. One night, while cleaning the walk-in cooler, I noticed a strange fog forming around my legs. The air was freezing, and I could see my breath even though it was July. Then, I heard faint humming again. I turned toward the door and saw a dark shape move across the window. Tall, slow, but human-like. My flashlight flickered, and when it came back on, the shadow was gone. After that, I barely slept. I kept hearing footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Barefoot, light, dragging. Sometimes, they'd stop right at my door. Once, I heard a soft voice whisper through the crack, "Why are you here?" I told myself I was imagining things. Exhaustion, lack of sleep, maybe the altitude. But when I mentioned the footsteps to Evelyn, she went silent for a long time, then said, "The canyon echoes things that aren't always sounds." She refused to explain what that meant. That night, I dreamt of a staircase carved into the canyon walls, spiraling downward into darkness. When I woke up, my feet were covered in red dust, as if I had actually walked there. I tried to quit the next morning, packed my bag, went to find Mr. Hartley, but he was gone. Evelyn told me he'd taken a few days off, though his truck was still in the parking lot. She said the phones were down again, and that if I wanted to leave, I'd have to walk to the ranger station 12 miles away. I hesitated. Something in her eyes told me not to go alone. That night, I decided to record the sounds I kept hearing. I set my old tape recorder by the window before going to bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke to faint knocking again. I froze, pretending to sleep, until the sound slowly faded. When I played back the recording the next morning, my stomach twisted. The tape caught whispers. Dozens of overlapping voices whispering my name over and over. The whispers grew louder every night. Sometimes I could make out words: stay, below. Remember. I went to Bill for help, but his cabin was empty, bed unmade, light still on, as if he'd left in a hurry. Evelyn claimed he'd gone home to visit family, but the look in her eyes said otherwise. That night, I noticed his cabin window shattered from the inside. By the end of the week, the entire lodge felt different. The walls seemed to hum, the lights flickered more often, and the air smelled faintly of iron. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I glanced at the canyon through the window, I thought I saw movement, shadows shifting just beyond the edge, even when the wind was still. One night, I finally worked up the courage to follow the sound. I left my cabin after midnight, carrying a flashlight and my recorder. The path toward the canyon was narrow and cold. As I approached the edge, I saw something that made my knees weaken. Faint handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the red dirt, leading down the slope like a trail. The handprints stopped at a small crevice in the rock. Inside, the air was colder, wet. My flashlight flickered, revealing symbols carved into the stone. Spirals, shapes resembling eyes, and something that looked like a staircase descending into darkness. That's when the whispering started again, this time behind me. I ran. When I burst back into the lodge, Evelyn was waiting in the hallway, holding a lantern. She looked calm, almost expecting me. "You heard them, didn't you?" she said. "Once they know your name, they don't stop calling." She told me the canyon had taken others before, people who wandered too close to the edge, drawn by the voices. "It doesn't kill," she whispered. "It collects." I didn't understand. I demanded answers, but she just smiled weakly and handed me an old map. "You'll see the markings. Don't follow them," she said. I unfolded it, and my breath caught. The spiral carvings I'd seen in the rock were drawn all over the canyon on the map, marked in red ink. Some were near the lodge. One was directly beneath it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I packed my bag, ready to leave at dawn. But the power went out again, and this time, it didn't come back. I lit a candle and sat by the door. Around 2:50 a.m., the knocking returned. Not 3 knocks this time, but continuous pounding, desperate, angry. I yelled for it to stop, but it only grew louder. Then suddenly, silence. When morning came, I went to find Evelyn. She was gone. Her room was empty, the lantern shattered on the floor. Outside, I found footprints leading from her cabin to the canyon edge. I followed them until they simply stopped, like the earth had swallowed her whole. Her map lay nearby, the ink smeared by rain. The red spiral beneath the lodge looked darker now, almost like it had bled through the paper. I ran back to my car, but the engine wouldn't start. I swore I'd filled the tank the day before. I tried the phone, dead line. I was completely cut off. I considered hiking to the ranger station, but the air felt heavier with each hour, the silence more suffocating. The canyon, once beautiful, now seemed alive, breathing, waiting. By the fifth night, I started losing track of time. My reflection in the mirror looked different, pale, hollow eyes, lips cracked. Sometimes when I looked long enough, my reflection didn't move with me. It blinked a second too late. That's when I realized I hadn't eaten in 2 days. The food in the fridge was spoiled, though the power had only gone out the night before. I tried to pray, but the moment I spoke, the walls groaned, a deep, low moan that made the floor tremble. I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside. The wind howled, and in it, I heard voices again. They were closer this time, whispering in unison, not calling me, but counting. I turned toward the lake behind the lodge. Its surface was perfectly still, like glass. Then, ripples began to form in slow circles. I stepped closer, and for a second, I saw faces beneath the surface, pale, featureless, drifting upward before vanishing again. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the wet ground, and the counting stopped. I don't know when I fell asleep, but when I woke, I was lying on the ground beside the lake. My clothes were soaked, and my shoes were gone. My flashlight was still on, pointing toward the lodge, but the windows were glowing faintly red from the inside, like something burning silently within. I went inside, calling for anyone, but the halls were empty. The air smelled of wet stone and metal. The floorboards creaked beneath my steps. Then I heard it, a faint humming coming from beneath the kitchen floor, the spiral on the map. I moved a table aside and noticed a small hatch hidden under the rug. It was unlocked. The air inside was freezing. A narrow staircase led downward, carved directly into the stone. I descended slowly, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The deeper I went, the louder the humming became. It wasn't voices now. It was a vibration, deep and rhythmic, like the canyon itself was breathing. At the bottom, I saw it, the same spiral carved into the stone floor, glowing faintly red. Around it were footprints, dozens of them, circling the spiral again and again, some fresh, some faded. I stepped closer, and my flashlight flickered. I heard a whisper, soft and familiar. "You finally heard us." The air shifted, my vision blurred, and then I felt the ground open beneath me, like the canyon had exhaled. I woke up at dawn, lying outside near my car. The lodge was silent, the lights off, no sign of anyone. The spiral hatch was gone, no trace of it under the floorboards. I drove away that morning without looking back. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear the whisper of the canyon, calling my name, counting softly, waiting for me to return.